Alright, hey guys, OFD checking in here, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Rolex Explorer 2, this being the reference number 16570, the black dial version, of course. They offer these in two different dial variations, the black and the white. The white is often known as the Polar Explorer. These are really cool watches, in my opinion, one of the coolest of the sports, the stainless steel sports series over the last 20 years. These watches had a really impressive run, developed in 1989, running through 2011 when they were replaced by the six-digit model. Also interesting, these were the last of the five-digit cases, or the five-digit models produced in the five-digit case size. So really kind of a cool aspect of the Rolex Explorer. Now, the Rolex Explorer was first introduced, the original version, in 1963. Very cool adventure watch, very simple, very plain, but very easy to use. In 1971, they introduced the Rolex Explorer 2 with the 1655. Now, that was a really neat watch, originally designed as a cave explorer's watch. They still offer the paperwork today with that background to it. But that one was truly just a watch with a second 24-hour hand, designed so that when spelunkers were down underground, they could tell the difference between day and night with the simple glance at that glowing, that bright glowing secondary hand there telling 24-hour time. When they moved to the 3185 movement in these Rolex, the 16570s in 1989, they added the independent movement of the hour hand on the watch, which made this a true GMT watch for those travelers out there that didn't want it just as a explorer's watch, but wanted it for world travel and to be able to look at that second time zone simply on this watch. The bezels on these watches are fixed, they're non-turning. They're simply there as a 24-hour function and to indicate that second time zone. So let's go ahead and get the watch up here a little bit closer to the camera and talk a little bit more about it. Now, in simple, beautiful Rolex Explorer fashion, this watch is not blingy. A lot of the new interpretations of the watches have much bigger hands. You have ceramic being used on like the Submariner, which make the watches pop a lot more. This is a very subtle watch, brushing all the way along the top of the watch, tops of the lug, as well as the bracelet. The only polishing on these watches is along the side of the case, and you can see it's beautifully, beautifully well done, and it carries along to the sides of this oyster bracelet also, which is very nice. Now, this particular version here is a 2003-2004 model. It is a no-holes case, so it's a later version. These have the nicer, solid in-link bracelets, but they do leave some things to be desired, and I'll get a little bit more into that as we go along. Taking a closer look at the dial on this watch, we'll bring it up here. The applied indices, as you guys can see, those surrounds are all white gold on the watch. You have a 2.5 times magnifier on this. This is an older one. There's a slight little bump in the top of the magnifier there, but no big deal. The beautiful, Mercedes style hands on the watch, as you would expect. Up there, just below the 12 o'clock, you have the Rolex Explorer 2, the Oyster Perpetual Date. Down below, the Superlative Chronometer, officially certified Swiss-made, just below 6 o'clock. Just really spectacular watches. Now, you can like the white one, you can like the black one. I like the black one because it takes a subdued watch and I think makes it even more subdued. Unless you're really a fan of Rolex watches, unlike the Submariner, not many people are going to glance over and know exactly what you have on your wrist. The Polar Explorer is a little bit different, but these are really, really beautiful watches. Taking a look at the other side of the case, you can see, of course, the Rolex crown there on the crown. Beautifully, beautifully done. The bracelet is all brushed, as I told you, all the way along, and the polishing on the sides. And here's what's left to be desired. Now, it has the older style, clasp assembly. So you have the stamped clasp to match the oyster style bracelet. A classic and kind of almost, a classic thing that Rolex has done over the years. So it's kind of neat. You're not going to find this in any of the new six-digit models. They've all gone to the solid scissor style clasp assembly, which they should have done years ago. But these are kind of a classic assembly design. Stamped with the Rolex there. Nothing fancy going on the case back. As you can see, this watch is pretty clean. No one's tried to polish up that case back to take those scratches out. And that's what you really honestly want to see on a used Rolex, guys, if you're picking one up. This one is in really beautiful shape, but you can take a look, and there's some case dings here, dings at the bottom of the case, but it's really what you want to see. What you don't want to see is a watch that's been polished so much that, say, this beveled edge here, this beautiful beveled edge like you'd see on a Tudor or Rolex, a Rolex Tudor, is in shape. You really want to make sure of that. A lot of them out there on the secondary market get polished up and a little over polished. They take that beveled edge away and it extremely affects the value of the watch. Now, let's talk about pricing on these watches. These guys are what I consider still pretty darn affordable. If you're lucky, you can find these still under $6,000, which I know is a lot of money. But looking at the prices of modern day sports Rolexes, they're getting very, very pricey, up into the five digits. If you can find them, available out there on the secondary market, these can still be found if you do your researching under $6,000. This particular model, I did a lot of trading. I traded a number of pieces out of the collection. I didn't spend any money, but I really emptied out the collection a bit to be able to bring this in, doing some trading. So I'm super happy to have it in the collection. I think it's a classic watch. Let's go ahead and pause it, get this watch on my 7-inch wrist, and we'll go out the loom shot. Wait a second, we're not ready for that yet because I want to tell you guys about the movements in these watches. The 3185 movement that they went to in 1989, guys, this movement has had a 22-year run. So, or not 22 years, it was actually replaced by the 3186, which many consider an inferior movement because of a particular part they used inside of it, a tiny little spring that if it breaks will actually stop the date from working. But the 3185 had a run from 1989 to 2006, which is very, very impressive. From what I read on watchmaker forums and whatnot, it's a pleasure to work on these. The base was the 3135 movement, which of course has been around for years and years with Rolex. So it's a very strong and simple movement. 31 joules, beats at 28,800 vibrations per hour, has a 50-hour power reserve, of course, hacking and hand windable, and has the 24-hour functionality. I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how the functionality for that second time zone works. So if you have the watch set for your standard time zone where you're at, you can actually, first position here is going to allow you to wind it. You pull it out to the second position, and this is going to allow you to independently move your hour hand. And it's designed to go forward or backwards depending on, of course, where you're traveling in the world, but you can set it that way. To set the date on the watch, you will actually run your hour hand all the way around, and it'll set the date once it flips over that 24 hours. So really nice movement from Rolex. So now let's go ahead and get it on my 7-inch wrist. Looking good on the wrist, guys. I usually like a 42 millimeter watch, but 40, I've started to really realize that 40 looks better on my 7-inch wrist, and probably even some 38s and 39s, to be honest with you, would look really good also. So the watch fits the wrist perfectly. A lot of charm. That's what the word I was looking for before in this old clasp assembly and the way it feels. A lot of charm in this old Rolex style bracelet, and it still feels very, very comfortable on the wrist, although I do find it lacking slightly in quality. Let's go ahead and dim the lights and see what the lume on this watch looks like. All right, now guys, I'm going to ask you for my forgiveness because, I don't review Rolex watches often on the channel, and I'm not a Rolex expert by any stretch, the imagination, but I am impressed by this watch. I think it's a really impressive watch. I know that people will balk at the price point, but still, for a sports Rolex these days, these are still affordable. These ones are going, like I said, you can find them under $6,000, whereas even the used variation of the newest model, the II-16570, those are going to, I think about the cheapest you're going to find one is about $8,000 or $9,000 on the secondary market. So beautiful, beautiful watches, guys. If you like the video, give me a thumbs up down there at the bottom. And if you've not subscribed to the OFD channel yet, please do. Please do. Thanks, guys.